What accommodation did God make for Israel concerning tithing? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Deuteronomy on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Deuteronomy chapter 14. We're going to be reading from verses 22 to 29. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Deuteronomy chapter 14, beginning of verse 22. You shall truly tithe all the increase of the grain that the field produces year by year, and you shall eat before the Lord your God in the place where he chooses to make his name abide, the tithe of your grain, and your new wine, and your oil, of the firstborn of the herds, and your flocks, that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. But if the journey is too long for you, so that you are not able to carry the tithe, or if the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, when the Lord your God has blessed you, then you shall exchange it for money, take the money in your hand, and go to the place which the Lord your God chooses. And you shall spend that money for whatever your heart desires, for oxen or sheep, for wine or similar drink, for whatever your heart desires. You shall eat there before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice, you and your household. You shall not forsake the Levite who is within your gates, for he has no part nor inheritance with you. At the end of every third year you shall bring out the tithe of your produce of that year, and store it within your gates. And the Levite, because he has no portion or inheritance with you, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow who are within your gates, may come and eat and be satisfied, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hand which you do. Under the law of Moses, instructions were given by God concerning tithes. Tithe means tenth, and unlike what we think of today, it was not meant to simply be 10% of the money you make, similar to an income tax. It was to be a tenth of whatever they grew in the field, or even the animals that they had. Not only would these tithes be used in the service of the Lord in the tabernacle, but they would be used in the caring of the priests and the Levites who would have no inheritance in the land of Canaan. That is why here in Deuteronomy, Moses is reiterating that each year they were to tithe of the grain that the field produces. The tithes were to be brought to the place where the Lord would place his name, in other words, the tabernacle and later the temple, and it was to be given, and a sacrificial meal was to be eaten. The purpose of this meal was so that they would learn to fear the Lord God always and keep his commandments. An obvious question would arise, though, as it concerned traveling to the tabernacle. If Israel was to tithe of their animals and of the produce of their grain, did God expect them to transport all this, even if their homes were a great distance from where the Lord placed his name? And the answer to that is no. Just like it was with other commands, God was gracious in not placing onerous demands on his people. If their house was too far from the tabernacle, God didn't relieve that person from their tithing duties. Rather, he gave them an accommodation. Instead of bringing the actual items that were to be tithed, they were to exchange those things for money. In other words, they were to sell it, and bring the money to the place where the Lord would place his name. When they got there, they didn't have to purchase the thing that they sold. Instead, they could purchase what they desired to tithe, like sheep, oxen, etc., and could tithe that instead. As part of this tithe, again, a sacrificial meal would take place that would be a time of rejoicing for the Lord's blessings. Now, wine and similar or strong drink is mentioned here, which of course caused some to conclude that God approved of what we call social drinking in Israel's day, and that he continues to approve of such today, with the prohibition merely on getting drunk. First, I must say that even if God approved of social drinking here, something I don't believe to be so, this isn't justification for us to do so, just as temple worship involving instrumental music isn't justification for us to do so today either. The law of Moses is not our law today, and so if we want God's approval for something, we need to look to the New Testament. Second, though, if God was approving of social drinking here, it would go against something God would reveal later. We don't often do this, but I would like us to read a passage that we haven't studied before, namely Proverbs 31, verses 4 to 7. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to those who are bitter of heart. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more. We find the purpose of alcohol here. It is not a beverage, but a medicine. So if Deuteronomy 14 wasn't implying that Israelites were to drink wine or similar drink, what were they to do with it? Remember, there are drink offerings offered under the law of Moses. And since sacrifices were going to be offered when the tithe was offered, it can be easily inferred that the wine and similar drink was used for that, and not drunk as a social beverage. The fact that Israelites could sell what was to be tithed in exchange for money, and then purchase what was to be tithed with that money, is what we see going on in the New Testament when Jesus cleansed the temple. We said in our discussion of Matthew 21:12-17 that what was going on in terms of selling animals and exchanging money was actually allowed under the law of Moses by what we read of here in Deuteronomy chapter 14. However, the temple was not to be used for this purpose, nor were exorbitant prices to be charged for the animals, thus taking advantage of the poor and those who were visiting. That's why Jesus cleansed the temple of the money changers. It was not because they were breaking the law by selling animals that would then be used for sacrifices. It was that they were doing so in the wrong place, and they were cheating people on top of that. Coming back to Deuteronomy, we do find that every third year, in relation to the sabbatical year, instead of bringing the tithe to the place where the Lord placed his name, they were to store up their tithe within their gates, so that the stranger, the fatherless, the widow, and the Levite could eat and be satisfied. It's not that God didn't provide for these people in other ways. It's that God provided for these people in a special way here, thus showing us his compassion and mercy. If Israel did these things, God would bless them. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 1-11, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.